So we've just landed on Lady Elliot Island. What an amazing flight over from Hervey Bay. We saw a lot of humpback whales on the way over here and did a lap of honours around the island before landing. For those who've been lucky enough to spend time on Lady Elliot Island, we'll all agree this is a very special place. Over the next few days, Ty and myself will be documenting the coral reefs around here, looking at their health and the associated animals depending on that.
I got him. Sorry, okay. Take two. Okay. Thanks, Stu. So here we are today on Lady Elliot Island, and as you can see behind me, we've got perfect conditions, so I'm really excited about getting in the water. Now today we've heard reports from the dive crew, they've already had manta rays and whales this morning, so I can't wait to get in there. And another thing that I really want to do while I'm here is check out the amazing features that make this eco island one of the true eco islands. So what is so special about this place and how they generate their water, power and electricity. We're going to go behind the scenes and talk to some of the experts on the island who keep this place ticking over. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm off to the dive shop and I'm going to go for a dive. So you walk away. Hopefully we get that money shot of you today with that coral and yeah. So what, like, you know the signal? So you go behind the coral, you get your eyes just there.
She's going to say to you, just wait at the bottom of the block for her. She's going to be in the water waiting for you. So just jump in.
But if we start chasing them, one, it disperses our group.
Try and get the nice shot of you. Yes, and it lights up the richest red.
The first thing to strike me here when entering the water is the diversity. Sure, there's the obvious large animals like the amazing mantas and turtles cruising around, but once you look beyond this, there's a whole myriad of life and ecosystem waiting to be discovered. So whilst on a dive, I like to seek out as many different corals and habitats as possible. The more species and diversity an ecosystem has, the better its chances in combating natural disturbances such as damage from storms, cyclones, predators such as the crown-of-thorns starfish, and climate change issues such as warming sea temperature and ocean acidification.
I find that on pretty much every single one of my tours I have to try and convince people that the coral here is not dead because of what they've heard in the media. So yeah, I mean, it is really important that we let people know there's lots of threats to the reef because there are, but at the same time coral reefs are actually very resilient naturally, and they can recover from cyclones and they can recover from bleaching events. When a coral bleaches, it's not dead, it's under stress, but it can recover from that stress, and that's exactly what we've seen here, is we've seen the corals recovering.
Nature is extraordinarily resilient. Don't ever forget the resilience of nature. I can point to just out here some of the most stunning coral you'll ever see. And you'll find it hard to believe that 7 or 8 years ago I would have taken you out there and it looked like a desert. We'd had a big cyclone, massive swell, smashed it to pieces. And it looked like it was never going to recover. There was an awful lot of tears in my crew, you know. And it's recovered, and nature will do that as long as we help it.
On the last dive, we saw large tracts of staghorn corals as far as the eye could see underwater. Very spectacular from a visual perspective. This is a very fast-growing species, up to 30-40 centimetres a year. As you can see, it can totally dominate an area, outcompeting slower growing species.
So out at the blowhole on the eastern side of the island, you're seeing lots and lots of beautiful plate coral, and lots of growth has happened there over the last few years. So you'll see lots and lots of really healthy coral there at the moment.
Probably my 5th time here, and I come here every year at the same week. I must admit, I was thinking during that dive that the coral is just exceptional. I think it's better than it was 5 years ago.
There was so many different kinds of coral and all the different colors. I really found it cool seeing all the clams and the giant turtles. The turtles here were huge. Just hearing the whales underwater too, that was pretty cool.
extremely lucky yesterday. We had a pretty much once in a lifetime encounter with a mother and a juvenile humpback whale that just were literally sitting still with us for around about an hour. So out of all the times I've been snorkeling here in 5 years, that's never happened to me before. So that was really, really amazing encounter.
Hey, it was amazing, as it always is.
Just got back from an amazing dive. We went down to the Severance, which is a sailing vessel, a steel sailing vessel with the mast still laid across the bottom. And as we were descending, I could already start seeing the targets that I wanted to film. I could see a leopard shark and some big rays down there. It was really good viz once we hit the bottom. And then we got to these bommies, and they were covered by baitfish. And coming through the baitfish, I was going, oh, what's that? Is that a big manta ray? But it was a full-size humpback whale. Came right past us on the dive. Unbelievable.
Then we went for the safari and saw the rays, the manta rays, and those were sort of, for me, the highlight. I didn't expect them. I didn't even know they were here, and it's an amazing creature. And we saw 10. It was a beautiful experience.
So with the manta rays, we're very lucky to see them feeding out here, especially at this time of year during winter. There's lots of food for them. So what you'll see them doing, as you said, is swimming along in that line. What they do is they swim against the current so they can get as much water into their mouth as they can. And so they're feeding on the plankton in the water, those tiny microscopic animals.
So what a great dive that was. Went out with Peter and Tamsin then. And we had turtles in the shallows, beautiful morning light, so we get that dappled effect with the photos. We went out to Lighthouse Bommy, and then just out from there there's another bommy, and there was a manta repeatedly circling that bommy at about 14 metres or so.
Lots of action in the water. There were lots of sharks. There was 2 really beautiful tawny sharks, which yours really scared away before I could get down there. There was also lots of turtles feeding as well up in the shallows just here, just as we came in now. A great morning snorkel here at Lady Elliot Island.
So now, what's that I can smell? That's the buffet breakfast. I think we'll be heading up with some brekkie after a 2.5 hour snorkel.
So we took over the island in 2005, and we've done an amazing amount of stuff since then. We planted almost 5,000 trees in that time.
We've got about 40 hectares on the island, and there's about 29 hectares of natural area which we're revegetating. Personia at the moment is the main tree that we're looking at, but we have about 20 odd species that we're propagating at the moment. In the nursery we have argusias, we have cordias, personias, sandpaper figs, casuarinas, and also a number of ground species like grasses and vines. Yeah, so these islands all have argusias on the very front verge to actually lift the wind as it blows across the water. In behind that we'll have pandanus, and then behind that casuarinas. Personias generally form the interior of the island, and they don't particularly like being in strong winds. So there's some lovely sandpaper figs here and just here. These guys provide food for a lot of the birds that we have on the island. The way we set up the regional ecosystems here and the different species that we have, it actually builds into providing a better environment for the birds. So where we've got things like crested terns, we're growing more grasses in those areas because they like open grasslands. As we get more Personia into the forest here, that'll cater more for the white-capped noddies and also start to build the soil for the shearwaters. Really the basis of the program that we're running is actually building the right environment for the species that both live here and also come here to reproduce.
What you'll see is you'll just see this enormous forest of Personias just getting a go and just getting bigger and taking it over. And what we're learning, which is just remarkable, is that we put the forest in for the forest's sake, and the birds have all returned, and we think, great, the birds are coming back and the birds are pooping. But what no one saw was what you're seeing out here. When the bird poop lands on the ground and then the water falls on the top, it soaks down through and it soaks into the aquifer below, the water table. And that aquifer is sitting in the soft coral, this stuff. It's sitting in that, but this is all sitting on that hard concrete base underneath us. So the water sits there, the tide comes in, it soaks in through the sand, and it takes a small percentage of that water and it pulls it back out. So So every day you're getting a really fine concentration. And it's a bit like chocolate. It's really good as long as you don't have too much of it. But as you know, if we get too much nutrient on a reef, it'll kill it. But a small amount of it actually encourages it. So since the forest has recovered, we've noticed amazing changes to the reef and the fish, and therefore the smaller fish, the bigger fish, the bigger fish. And then you couple that with the fact that back in 2004, this place was declared a green zone, a total protection, no take, no fishing, no spearing. And the fish have just got more and bigger and bigger. It's a really exciting thing to see happening.
Before this, we're using diesel generators that ran 24/7, burning 550 litres of diesel a day. So this was our first step towards what we want is full renewable. 96 solar panels, we had 48 batteries, and by the time we'd put this in, we had then reduced our diesel burn by over 70%. Yeah, we got saltwater batteries in there. Rather than having lead and acid, they have salt water and natural carbon. So when the battery's finished with, you can empty that out, reuse the cases, so there's nothing going back into the environment.
This is your waste treatment system for the island, and
the results we get out of this wastewater treatment plant is extremely good. Engineers are surprised that such a basic system, we can be putting such good water back into the environment.
We've just recently introduced a solar hydro system, whereby it's a solar panel and has little fans, and it brings the air, just the air moving past us is moisture laden. It brings it in and it extracts the moisture out of it. It's crystal clean water, like rainwater.
Depends on the humidity in the air to get the water. So what's happening, it's putting the air through the panels. You can hear the fans blowing, and it's just drying out that air, capturing the water. The water runs down the inside of this glass, captured in the bottom, runs back into the unit, which has a 30-litre storage tank in each unit.
so this is water from the sky. Oh wow, that's really nice. Yeah, it's smooth water.
It was beautiful. They teach you a lot there about how the reef goes through periods of bleaching and regeneration, so you learn a lot about the life cycle of the reef, which we're seeing, and no doubt there are things threatening the reef, but the whole reef is not dead.
This is one thing that I did come in expecting to see a lot of the bleaching that I've heard about in terms of the algae leaving the coral reefs, and honestly what I experienced here on Lady Elliot was anything but. Extremely colorful, extremely vibrant, and lots of marine life. So coral reefs are extremely healthy, definitely here in terms of my experience.
You know, it was more than I could have ever imagined. I watched some videos before I went and, you know, read the guidebooks, but nothing could prepare me for how magical and beautiful that place was. Everything was so vibrant and full of life. I could just float there for hours and hours. And
Lady Elliot has produced once again. This is why it is the best filming destination on the Southern Barrier Reef. This place is truly a place where you can come and absorb nature and get it into you. It's good for you. Breathe that salt air. I highly recommend it for anyone in the world. If you want to come somewhere that is truly special, this is the most amazing eco resort I've ever been to.
Basically the message I try and tell people is that it's not too late to help these reefs, and there's lots of really easy things that we can do at home to make a difference. Things like reducing, reusing, recycling, trying not to use plastic too much, because microplastics in the ocean is even tiny little coral polyps are feeding on microplastics. Things like reducing obviously the use of fossil fuels, but also really easy is something like choosing sustainably caught seafood, because that's a really big impact as well.
Because there's so much every single one of us can do. You live in Lithuania, you can talk to your government, you can plant trees, you can turn a bit more power off, you can use less more power, you can ride your bicycle or walk more than use your car. You live here on the Great Barrier Reef, your impact is more obvious, but each and every one of us is playing a part. I call it the death of 1,000 cuts. The reef and the planet didn't get hit by one killer punch. It's all been hit by lots of tiny little impacts that have led us to where we are today. But the answer to that is very simple. It's the same thing in reverse. Lots of tiny little impacts will get us out of the challenges that we currently face. Each and every one of us can make one of those tiny little steps towards it. Sadly, there are agendas, and I don't criticise any of them, I just accept that they're there. Tourists and tourist operators have their reasons that they want it to be considered pristine. Scientists have their reason to consider that it's under threat and it needs to be looked after. Coal miners have their reason to think it's perfectly okay and nothing's going to be harmed. But the reality is that somewhere in the middle, the reef has got its threats, and anybody who tries to hide from that is fooling themselves. But we should all have hope. I mean, Jane Goodall puts those amazing reasons for hope out there. You know, the brilliance of the human mind, the enthusiasm and the energy of young people, the resilience of nature, and the indomitable human spirit. We will survive, and the reef will survive. I have no doubt in my mind.
The shaky hands he's got, I can't believe that he gets any shots at all.
Stewie, can you say an enemy 3 times very fast, please?
An enemy, an enemy, an enemy. Don't be an enemy with an enemy.
You know, without going too far into that, oh, there's a whale out there. How lucky would you be able to see that?
Any videographers missing at all?
Yeah, I was just like, oh, only at the beginning. I was like, oh no, it's 2 minutes in and I've already lost them. Help me.